All right, we're gonna go around the room and have you turn on mics and say something. Cameron and Curly works. Michelle, would you go first? I know you're not supposed to have any.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
Yours didn't come through me, Lindsay.
Hello.
It doesn't show you're muted.
Yeah, sure. For the technical yeah, I'm wondering if we need to use the microphone option to make sure it's Hi. What color are you guys seeing on Michelle?
The on Church Ranch.
Okay.
About 10 minutes.
Yes.
There was a dance competition the first night, so it was a little bit of a rowdy place, but it settled down last night.
Oh my gosh, how old were the contestants?
Right, let's try to get let's try to catch yours, see if it's working.
And that's coming back.
Testing,
Yeah,
testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Catherine?
They were all teenagers, I think.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it's mine as well.
Hello.
Good morning. Yeah. Dave?
Morning.
Try it again.
Okay, is it working?
There it is. Okay. Rich?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
No, go again.
All right, let me switch it. Good morning, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, came through. Dave,
This chair.
Good morning. Hopefully I'm moving clear.
you got all of them. Try to
Testing. I'm listening.
Just your eardrum flap. How about that?
I mean, I can hear myself.
You can turn it up a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. So you should.
Right, because letters just come so low, I can't pick it up.
What's that?
Try talking.
Hello?
Now I picked it up that time.
You got it?
Great.
Okay.
Good morning.
Thank you.
So you suggest for Dave to turn your mics on and off, I mean, so they're going to sure I'm fine, except for Michelle and Michelle will be on all day.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, are we ready to start? Yeah, great. So real quickly, wanted to check in with everybody and see if you had, after
getting away from the work for a little bit and having a little bit of time to reflect. If you had any additional thoughts from yesterday, if there's something that is not up here that you feel really passionately about, and just kind of do a check-in before we go into the next and the last do with you all, and that's coming up with objectives. So before we go there, thoughts, reflections.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for getting that information to us so quickly. That was great.
You're welcome.
There's one word that is not on our, what do you call the words that are in?
Guiding principles.
There's one word, I don't know if it's in or needs to be in the other section, innovation or be innovative.
Mm-hmm.
Like that for me, and I can write an additional one.
Just gonna add it to the wall.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Councilmember Scully.
So I also felt like 2 words were missing, inclusive and diversity are both missing.
Did you get that, Michelle?
Yep, inclusive and diversity.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we have equity of equity and access to opportunity, I think, in there, but I think maybe just equity in general. I don't know if we want to limit it. So, right, might be something.
Yeah, we might want to just have a guiding principle that includes all of those diversity, equity, inclusion as one. Yeah,
I think that would be more appropriate.
We have equity here, so I'm adding inclusive and diversity as well.
yeah, and I think we can probably merge them all into one. So but you can leave it like it is for now, Michelle, because we're going to go back and we'll have more than one crack at this. So, anyone else? Good thoughts?
I don't know if this is appropriate. This is really a question, not a direction to the group. In our vision statement, we talk about being a sustainable community, but we want to add that to mean sustainability and holistic and fiscally sustainable. Sorry, thank you. This will kick in. So I'm wondering, we have sustainability in our vision statement. We do have it through some of the larger goal objectives. But as far as the guiding principle, do we want to address that again in like the most holistic sense of the term sustainability, where it's fiscal, economic, social, triple bottom line.
I just didn't know if that
might
one of the lenses
empowering staff
and everything through.
Is that not covered in stewardship? I thought yesterday when we talked, we felt that sustainability was part of our stewardship kind of guiding principle.
I definitely think that they're related. I think there's a nuance difference, right? Because as far as like ensuring that we're thinking about public value, both near term, long term, and multiple avenues is maybe more descriptive in sustainability. But stewardship, I love that word too. To me, they're slightly different, but one is like expanding the horizon of the impact, I guess, on our investments. And one is making sure that they were doing a good job. So I would prefer to have both as a guiding principle, but
I see what you're saying, if you want. Right, I just want to make sure that we're covering both things, so that we're taking both marks basically, and not dismissing the sustainability.
Giving empowering staff to realize that's like a driving, a guiding principle of everything that they're doing. Does that make sense?
Do you think that extrapolating out the
Do you think of extrapolating out the stewardship one to be one point that says sustainability and stewardship, or do you think it's a whole separate one?
No, I think that's
like if we're looking at the guiding principle list, like I would think we don't want like
Five
guiding principles that we're directing staff with, like, I feel like we want to
Mhm.
be putting
But I
it
think
in. And
that's
so
like-
synergy, I think we would want to try to figure out which ones
I think just like diversity, equity and inclusion are related but slightly different. I think stewardship and sustainability are related but slightly different. And so, yeah, if you wanted to pair them together, absolutely, that's fine. And again, I was just trying to create like a thread from a vision statement to guiding principles to goal objectives. You know what I mean? Think of it as a clear line, but it was a question. If we feel like it's not necessary.
So I'm just really trying to think through it, like if you wanted it at that level, or if it's just one of those things that's part of stewardship where we're then defining it further
I
down
would
the
say stewardship
list.
is more
I don't
part
know.
of sustainability, but I want to be clear to both our residents and to our staff that those are guiding principles that we all agree on and support.
No, I agree with that too. I'm just trying to think which way you would want it, or if even you just mash them together and it's one guiding principle.
I think the MASH might be a good.
MASH, and again,
And I'm not married.
revisit it. You can always revisit it. Anyone else? Yes, Councilmember Seymour.
Remember, this may, since we're, working on the top part of that, since we include DEI as a separate line, do we need to then have equity and access to opportunity, or just make it access to opportunity? Either way, I'm just trying to think of, good, hit the high point on those.
Yeah, I don't think you probably need to be repetitive.
And that, just a small thing too, just a thought.
Yes, Councilmember Scully.
So I guess I kind of feel like if we have a line that says diversity, equity, inclusivity, we don't really need a line that says access to opportunity because we kind of say the same thing. Does that make sense?
So I think, I appreciate where, Councilor Seymour is coming from and where you're coming from. There is one of those goal objectives that we did in yellow that says you changed it, on the dynamic and diverse economy. We changed it to promote access to opportunity through, and would that meet your kind of desire to have that called out, that we have a goal of creating fairness and access to opportunity, right? Like making sure everybody has the ability, if we choose to be successful in these communities. Do you feel like that highlights it enough, or do you want it up there?
No, absolutely. I didn't want to have too much repetition at the top either.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
I'd be fine with.
Sorry.
Well, no, and I was kind of just going down, and then my next thought was, well, we can take that whole line out because we've already covered it. I just didn't want repetition up there.
My apologies for misunderstanding.
I probably just said, let's strike that.
So what I've done over here, if I'm hearing you correctly, is I crossed out equity here next to access to opportunity. So it just reads access to opportunity. And then down here we have the diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I think we can take that whole line out
The access to.
because we covered elsewhere.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know. I'm going to push back because I really liked the opportunity as a guiding principle for the overall.
Do we want to expand that and have high quality of life? So one thing I always talk about is access to high quality of life. But I don't know how to say that as a guiding principle. We could call it just public value.
I think you could say that in access to opportunity. I mean, it kind of has that.
High quality of life is beyond, well, yeah.
well, I think it all depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, high quality of life is really the outcome of many things. So access to opportunity is a means to creating high quality of life as a result. So,
Well, one thought
Yeah.
with the opportunity. So, I mean, if we think about just our nation in general, to me, it's all about providing opportunity. I mean, that's what is the American dream. So it doesn't always equal the same outcomes because people have to take some action. So as far as like governance, like, making sure that we are creating opportunities and means of level playing field for everybody who lives here and removing barriers for any different group of people. I think that's where, I think access to opportunity, however you want to say it, I mean, you could definitely expand upon it so that we say all those things, that it's making sure that that same opportunity is equal across the board or however you want to look at it. But, that's the reason it's important to me.
I would encourage you, and I can provide Don and Cody the link, but have you all heard of the Opportunity Index? Have you heard of this before?
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's a national index that lists, I think it's probably about 26 factors that lead to people having opportunities in a community. And you can, the national website has metrics for every state in the country. And they build off of data that's available, right? That's already out there on the web to come to these metrics. But if you looked at however many the number is, it's 21 or 26, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. But it's very descriptive about what targets you have to hit in order to create opportunity for people. And I think if this is a concept that you really like, I think it would be worthwhile to take a deeper look at that.
Well, and there's some almost unexpected alignment with it, right? Like I'm tempted to, like, what if we said DEIO, diversity, equity, inclusiveness, and opportunity? Like, could we include it there? And then it's really not just, I think, like, tied just to economic. It's educational opportunity, it's health opportunity, it's, does that work for people?
That's for me. I think that's kind of the point.
I think
I just think it's a really good point, and it kind of broadens. I love that we're talking about having a level playing field, right? And just making sure we remove systemic barriers to opportunity. I think that's a really good discussion that should happen at every level, and I'd like to encourage us to continue to talk about it. So yeah, let's do that.
Great, nice solution to that. Awesome. All right. Any other reflection or suggestions from the work of yesterday? Yes, Councilmember Bowles.
I have one concern last night. Thinking about, we saw from stakeholders, we saw from our city staff leadership, divisiveness. We saw it come up a few times in our environmental foundation. I want to be sure, I guess I sort of put it out there as a thought, that we're somewhere addressing that in some way. I don't think we have, but I don't know. I feel like that's, my concern is we're businesses. We're trying to recruit businesses to our city. If there's a real perception there's a divided city, that's harder to recruit. And recruiting good staff, good leaders for our staff. If there's that perception, so I would like us to consider maybe ways to have just a general position that we would be working on to have more unified in the long term. So I'm really concerned about that concept.
I think that's great that you brought that out because we did hear it over and over again. It showed up in many different places in the environmental scan. And one thing you could do, it could fit under the thriving, inclusive, and engaged community and promoting access to opportunity through a resilient and diverse economy. You could identify some key objectives that address that divisiveness piece. I think that's important.
It's something
Yeah.
we could address a lot of things. I guess a piece we haven't yet quite addressed.
I think having a specific objective around that would make a lot of sense. And I think it could live in that category very nicely. Yeah, I think in the small groups you're gonna have this morning, that's a worthy discussion. Yeah. Yes, Councilmember Demott.
To kind of follow up on that, we did touch a little bit, or I tried to, around the Westy Rise. And again, I'm not saying it wasn't good work. I'm just saying that some of those, and I don't think it's all of what you saw in the survey, but I could think of an area where that might look like, you know, not everybody's getting that equal opportunity to say what their city is going to be, whether it's reality or perceived. I mean, that's that perception's reality for people, right? So how we address those kind of things, I think, is important. And I've actually had a lot of good discussions with Justin Davis, the chair of the Inclusivity Board. Obviously, he and I have very different worldviews, but we have great conversations. And like one of the things that he shared with me that he appreciates about, you know, me being part of that board for the last 8 months or whatever it's been is I do tend to push back, as you know, because like I just want people to think these things. It's not that they're wrong for their view. Maybe it's not for me, but you know, I just want people to, like a group like that, I think it's important that they think through the other side of the coin, so to speak. Not because I'm trying to get them to change, but I want them to think of the other people that our city reflects. And so, you know, I really enjoy that they do that kind of work. So I do think that the council, prior to this council with Anita and Herb's leadership with the Inclusivity Board, I think that's a great opportunity where we can tackle those kind of things. But it's also making sure that everybody has that opportunity to be part of those discussions.
Was it Mayor Pro Tem first? Okay.
And I apologize for not using the chat. I'll do a better job of that. I don't know how this fits in here, but I think it's part of this conversation, and I think it goes beyond our inclusivity board. There's a lot of sticky issues that are not just dividing Westminster, they're dividing our nation. And as a community that has a goal to be, you know, to have strong neighborhoods, to have a strong community identity, to have engaged residents, is it a natural fit for us, whether it's through our parks, recs, libraries, through our inclusivity boards, through our police department, to facilitate some difficult conversations about issues that are percolating up, and try to help promote dialogue and promote unity. So most recently, and this is a little personal for me being from Boulder, but after the shooting in Boulder, I was wondering if it would make sense for a regional approach to have a conversation on violence, right? Mass violence in this country, and not coming in there with attack of gun control, not coming in there with attack of mental health, but really coming in there to have a conversation, invite the experts, public health experts, police departments, school districts, community reach, right? All of these people get them at the table and have a conversation about what we know, right? Where are the drivers? And I'm using this as an example, but I'm wondering if we could have it about a lot of conversations, you know, that are going on, and have it be part of a whole library series or part of a community conversation series. And does that remind people, like, you and I probably have very different views on guns, but I know at your core you abhor mass violence. I know at your core you abhor senseless killings, right? And so I think that we can find those overlaps and have some level of dialogue, because I think when people aren't even willing to talk to each other, and there's a barrier that continues to fragment the community, right? And the polarization is getting to the point where people are dehumanizing each other. It's like gone into tribalism, and it's not healthy for anybody. And so I don't know if this is the appropriate place to have this idea, but I did want to throw it out because I think it's related to what you're saying. It's related.
Do you mind if I follow up?
Councilor Bowles is saying, yeah.
I think that's actually perfect, in my opinion. So a couple things. I would say under Tom and the chief's leadership, we've been doing some of that work in our police department to address some of those things, because I don't think it's 100% outside of the city. people say divisiveness. But I don't think it's 100% in the city either. I think that there probably is a large amount of those things that are national drivers that we're feeling the weight of. But that's a great example of gun violence. I am very pro Second Amendment, but it's not. And we do get into these weird places where like all of a sudden people want gun control and other people don't. Where like part of the reason that I've gotten guns is self-protection, protecting my family. I've done security for churches. I know a lot about statistics of mass shootings, and my whole reason for doing all that stuff is to protect people, which is the same reason I think a lot of people go after gun control. So I think having those discussions is important for our community, even if that didn't happen here. I mean, that's a topic that our community is going to feel, and they are going to see it in the views of the people that they elect within a city. If you're following what I'm saying. So like, I think that's a great opportunity for council, especially because we have different views, to say, hey, here's why I think maybe we need to tighten up on these gun controls, or why, and then have a whole conversation about why, I think that the right to bear arms is important also to protect people. And we got to this a little bit yesterday when we were talking about climate change. The why is different for people. So I think that we all can agree that mass killings is not acceptable, and we need to figure out how to stop it. But how we get there might be very, very different. And then if we get stuck into that place where people feel like their rights are being trampled on, conversation's over. You're not, you know what I mean? So like, I think you're absolutely right, and I don't think it's an inappropriate place. How it feeds into the city, I think our leadership will go downhill if we get along on some of these things that maybe typically we wouldn't get along, or at least we try to hear each other out.
I think that's right. I was trying to, I guess, create an action that maybe matched Councilor Wool's desire to talk about divisiveness. I think some of the divisiveness is maybe divisiveness on council, divisiveness within the organization that we saw percolating, but I also think it's within the community and the national dialogue. So this was just one idea, and I don't want to be too prescriptive. Out of transparency, I will let you know, I talked to people at Tri-County Health to see if they were interested, 2 of the board members, and they were interested. I don't want Westminster to feel like we always have to take ownership of every idea, but looking to see if there might be an appetite regionally, and from the very few stakeholders I've talked to, there's a lot of appetite right now. So just throw it out.
Councilmember Scully.
So I really like this idea. I think that it is an important component to add to our social dynamics. That they say that you think it, you say it, you do it, right? And so I think that this would be a really good step in the right direction. So I would be willing to add an objective, and I was thinking that maybe the objective could say to create a homogeneous community that is unified to make a better quality of life, something like that as an objective.
So what I was going to say is a matter of process in the creation of the strategic plan is what Mayor Pro Tem Site started to describe was a key objective at a higher level around all of this. You're starting to put words to it. Since we're starting to move into objective discussion, I think we should go there, right? Unless we have any other high level things we want to cover from yesterday, I would just ask us to go ahead and just move right into there, because we're already segueing into that. Does that make sense? Yes, Councilmember Lamont.
The only thing I'd add, like specifically with the example that you used, and I know you love Upstream Solutions, we were joking with you yesterday about it, but I mean, the whole thing with a lot of the gun violence and hate that we see, it's the effect of something. It's not the, we need to start as society going after the cause, and not always like what was used or how they carried out an evil act. I'm not saying that those aren't components, and certain people, we need to assure certain people don't have access to dangerous things. But the reality is you still had a broken person, and that's how I see that person, a broken person who decided to do something awful. And so, as a society and as a community, how do we make sure that we're addressing those people that feel so marginalized in life that they do something like that? So I think that's one of the other things. And I think you see that throughout our strategic plan in the 3 years I've been on, where we try to address things like mental health and access to those kind of resources. So I would hope that we make some sort of objective that we're going after the root of some of this stuff versus the effects.
But I think that's the point of the objectives, is to keep them there at kind of high level and allow the staff to really dig deep and come up with solutions on how we do it. I don't think anybody wants to get into the specifics of the guns, and that I agree with you, that is not the root cause. It is a symptom, but it is not a root cause. And we need to get to that root cause. And I think that, again, saying it in our objectives is going to help us begin to realign our staff to start thinking in that direction. And if they start thinking in that direction, it trickles, just like you said. It trickles from the staff, and then we're all thinking in that direction, and then to our residents and to our schools, because our residents have children in the schools, and we start to see that build. And I like another thing that Mayor Pro Tem Sites said, was that we don't always want to be the ones that are taking it and making it our thing, but let's work together as a region, and let's start thinking about how can we take this to, and again, she thinks upstream, you're right. So I like that, but I don't think anybody wants to get to that. We have a divided country, but we have to remember that there are many people that really believe gun control is important, and that the Second Amendment is important. And I respect that and think that is important to honor. But you're right, it's a bigger problem, and that's where we need to start heading, is addressing that bigger problem. But I think we start with trying to heal and trying to remind ourselves that we are all part of the same group of people here. We all live in the same community. We all have that in common together. We love this community. And that's what we're trying to preserve here as our community.
And I don't disagree. I guess it's just making sure that the objective is the right thing to go after, so that you're going after the root, and that's the objective, whatever the problem is.
And I think that's good to expand it beyond just gun control. I'm wondering, with this conversation, the last big picture I'm thinking is what I'm hearing you're saying, and what I think I say kind of frequently, is understanding what are the root causes, right? It's cheaper to address things at the source than fixing the symptoms down the road. And it's more scalable. Do we want to have an objective that's lead through understanding, or, basically, government is always better when they fully understand before implementing the policy, the impacts, the intended, unintended, the good and the bad and the ugly. And so I don't know how to articulate this well, but do we want to have as an objective, governance through examination, or governance through knowledge, or something that we're intentional, that we really truly want to lead? Dawn gets at this a lot. What are we trying to solve? What is the why? And then we have to also so there's the why, and we have to understand what is the problem, right? And where are our dollars invested, and our energies to try to mitigate the harm of that. So I don't know how to, I apologize, I don't know how to succinctly capture that, but do we want to have an overarching goal that is on best practice, best understand? Do you know, can you help me out here?
Yeah, it could be a guiding principle. It could also be a goal.
Okay.
As I've been listening to this conversation and I'm thinking back on yesterday, it feels like a guiding principle to me, and it's that concept of the upstream focus, which is also part of creating opportunity. The upstream focus is what the opportunity index is built around, and it's what the social determinants of health is built around. The whole focus on the upstream. It's the focus on, for any kind of environmental program you're going to put together, the focus is upstream. So to me, it sounds like a guiding principle, and I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but.
Yeah, and I apologize, my internal dyslexic.
It's almost something around solutions that deal with the core of the problem. I don't know the more succinct way to say that, but like, I mean, I could easily go down a rabbit hole with it. Like, even if I think about safety, there's so many aspects of the topic of gun violence that are like, how do you prevent it? How do you, make sure businesses are safe? Like, I know our police department has done a great job in educating schools on how to be safe, but I mean, that's an opportunity that could probably be expanded to our businesses to, give some sort of program that said, we'll go through your business the same way they do with our schools and say, we can help you mitigate risk. There's never on this side of the grave going to be no risk, but like, how do we do that? And obviously that's down in the weeds, but that's those opportunities in partnerships.
Yeah.
But I mean, they all come from us saying like, what are some of these root things that we have to deal with? And then trying to think through them at root cause and downstream issues that they cause. So it's just that holistic process of thinking of issues that the community has to deal with.
Yeah, it has the source of it. And I'm not finding a nice, crisp way to capture that, but maybe, Michelle, we could just put the concept up there and we could work on the words. No, it's fine. We don't have to, the thing that you don't have to worry about today is we don't have to wordsmith it today. Okay. We need to get the concepts and the ideas, and then, you can rely a little bit on Barry Dunn to do some of the wordsmithing, and we can use staff to help us with that as well, because this is all going to come back to you.
Or we could all get nasty upstream testing.
I think the concept. I think that whole concept is so in alignment with what I've heard you all talk about over the last day and a half, that it just threads through, and it seems like it should be there.
Michelle, would you mind articulating the concept? Because we're all sitting here with the different bubbles above our heads.
So
what that concept
the concept, as I understand it being described, is a position or a stance that you take. I guess that's probably the best word I can think of. A position or a stance that the city would take around problem solving, where you say it is our guiding principle that we are going to try to identify the root cause of the problem rather than treating symptoms or conditions.
So now you're going into a process for problem solving. I thought you were headed towards a foundational principle as to how we interact.
Well, I think they're
It's a little different.
I think they're related, and I might be like 10,000 feet lower than
Yeah.
we're going with it. So again, I think we're struggling to find the right way to describe
Because
this.
there's a whole number of things that include under that. Like, one of the lenses is we have a charter, there's a state constitution,
Yeah.
there's a set of local ordinances, we have resources, we have priorities. That's a lens, around whether we decide as a city to take on a particular issue. But
Right.
what I heard Mayor Pro Tem say, I don't want to misspeak with what you said here, Anita, but what I heard was more about Westminster City Council being kind of the standard in our community for how we interact on the most difficult of subjects.
I think that's a great way to state it.
Was it something like that, Anita?
I think that there was a couple of different things that were said. So I would, let's separate them. The first, with the idea of upstream, the idea of having a guiding principle is that as we craft policy, as we problem solve, we really want to make a commitment organizationally and as a council to understanding the problem and trying to be the most efficient and effective in the ways we address it. So that may be going at the root cause, but that may be on, where is the best place? So just really a commitment to understanding a problem when we're solving it, right? And not starting, I think this actually kind of not codifies, but it articulates what you said, understanding both the why and the what.
Yeah.
And not starting from that level of, what's the top, I'm looking for sort of, yeah, well, not like kind of, the other thing
had made a comment about really wanting to address the divisiveness that was raised as a concern. And I think that goes beyond just our organization. I think that goes into the community. And so and I had kind of mentioned this concept with you. I don't think Westminster always has to be the leader, but I'm wondering if we want to facilitate community conversations. Facilitate, but convenient some of these tricky issues. But we've already talked, when we were having issues with racial injustice, we were having issues with the U.S. was having conversations about systemic racism. How do we work maybe with our libraries to cultivate, a program on that, like having books available? Do we expand that? And I use the specific example of mass silence, and could we have a conversation with stakeholders and be part of that? So I don't know how to articulate that. Well, it might be Westminster engages the community in sticky issues or in pressing conversations that impact our community, our nation, and our world, or something like that. And maybe that's not appropriate. I was just throwing that out as something that I thought might fit that goal. So I apologize. I do think it was two things.
Yeah, it is two things. I think we're trying to find the right way to describe the guiding principle that we've been discussing, in addition to recognizing there's probably a key objective here around addressing the issue of sex.
I have 4 people that we like to talk.
Yep.
We're going to move to them, we're going to move on. We're going to spend all day on this one right now. Lindsay, you're up.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion and where we're going. It goes back to much like what we talked about yesterday, as far as how much is too many guiding principles for staff to really focus on and really hone in on. I know that there's objectives that we define under that, but I get concerned when we start adding a bunch of different principles. Not that they're not important, but it gets then to the staff level, and I can see it being confusing to what a direction of council would need or want. And so I think it's an important discussion to have. I think it also lends to at what level, and Mayor Pro Tem, you kind of touched on it, at what level, like, do we go that far into having a tough discussion, or do we maybe partner and have a discussion with our other resources? And so I'm just thinking big picture wise, if that's something that we need to add. And Mr. Tripp, thanks for clarifying, because I will be honest, I didn't understand the guiding principle as far as like what we're trying to get at. I know that we're trying to address unity and division. And so, but to me, even as a counselor, if I'm not quite understanding like where we're going, I feel that the translation then could be lost, not just with our staff, not just with council, but then to our community. So I just wanted to throw out that I feel like we're good at big picture, but let's stay big picture and maybe continue through the process as far as, okay, now we understand where we're going. Is there a gap? Is there something else we need to add? But like I said, I appreciate the conversation. I don't want to minimize it, but I appreciate what we're trying to accomplish here. So.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's a good conversation to have too, but the pandemic has shown us other things as far as when our neighbors can't get together, and that's added to this year too. They can't be out, they can't socialize like they used to, and so Park Rec and Library is going to play an critical part about this going forward. But if we look at an issue like homelessness, that's a great, there's a lot of things some models that have been done, Albuquerque, some of the issues that they've tried in other cities as far as drug rehabilitation and the mental health combined together. But our residents see the on the ground issue and they want that addressed too. So I think we have to be real careful is that you can work on upstream, but then you have to deal with the encampment on the stream. And we can't ignore that either, because that's what our residents and we don't want to turn into Denver. So.
agree. I think, somebody said that, so I agree. I think it's two different things. I brought up the advice of this because I thought it was a gap. And well, I think it spirited dialogue around tough issues that maybe we can hash out. Like we're doing here. We're all face to face talking. If that happens, or maybe we are less advice. So that, I guess, the other guiding principle, I think, I think that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
And I also support, I think it's a good idea, but I want to separate it.
Right.
Have an objective.
I agree with you.
Okay.
That one, the first one is truly an objective from my perspective, like from the strategic planning perspective. And the other sounds like more of a guiding principle. I agree. All right, are you ready to move into, because you've already started to talk about objectives. So without further ado, I'm going to ask my wonderful colleague over here to lead you through the objectives piece of this.
All right. So the last kind of part of the process here, as we finish out our time together before some final wrap up, is going to into different groups, and we'll read those out in a minute, but you're going to work in a similar fashion to how you did yesterday, using the sticky notes to identify objectives. So you'll have one objective written on each sticky note, and we'll follow a similar process to yesterday where you'll discuss in your groups what you want those objectives to be, contribute ideas from each member, have discussion to reach consensus, make any edits to those, and then once you have those, we'll come back together as a full group, put those on the wall and talk through those and thoughts and reflections on those. So a couple notes to the process. Yesterday, great work was done, and some of those are already looking like objective statements. So we'd first ask, when you split up into your groups, come over here to the wall, take a look at what's mainly in orange from yesterday afternoon, some other colors sprinkled in there too, but if anything looks like an objective statement to you that's particularly attractive that you like, go ahead and put a star on that one, just so we know. We have markers up here, so that'll be the first thing that you want to do. When we talk about objectives, I think everybody is starting to see that definition, but we're really just talking about those measurable steps that you're going to take to support and fulfill the goal that it would fall within. Okay, so first take a look at what we already have up there. Next, think of what we don't yet have up there, but that would be a great objective to put into place. And you'll ask these questions to kind of guide your development of what that might look like. So first, what are those specific steps that we'll take to get to achieving that specific goal? And then ask yourself, if we achieve the objective that we're thinking of, does it move us closer to that specific goal? Yes or no? If you're not sure, maybe think about tweaking how that's written to get to a very clear yes sentiment there, okay? And if the answer is no, what objectives do move us closer? Let's try to be really clear in thinking through that end product. Again, we don't have to get so far granular into the weeds of the how, but we want to be able to give some direction about what specific steps might look like in achievement of that goal. So here's some questions. We'll leave this up here. You can take a picture if you want to work outside as you split up in your groups. But again, first you'll want to come over to the wall and use a marker to make any stars on what's particularly resonating with you. Michelle, any other comments before I split them up?
That was very well set up, Michelle.
Any questions before we split into groups?
Just let our groups on.
Okay, you're ready to get into it. I love it. We've already talked about some good examples, have some examples on the wall, but up here are just a few other examples if that's helpful to you. For the first group, we'll have counselors Scully, DeMott, Smith, and Voles. And group 2, we'll have Mayor Atchison, Mayor Pro Tem Seitz, and Counselor Seymour. So again, come up here and grab some markers from Michelle and I. We're going to use the green sticky notes. We have more if you run out, but let's start with green so we can try to group those.
Who wants to take them from each group? Okay. And then the second group? Yes.
See, right now.
Yeah, and since this is our main focus today, and we are getting into that slightly more detailed conversation, we have as much time as you need to do this, so don't feel rushed, but we do want to make sure the conversations are productive, so stay focused, but we'll check on you in maybe 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Just to see how it's going. We have plenty more time if you need. So we'll split up.
Perfect.
We need to tell people.
So for the public that are listening in, if you didn't catch that, we're going to give about 20 minutes to the 2 breakout groups that are going to be working on identifying specific objectives. And then we'll come back together as a large group. They'll report out on those. And if more than 20 minutes is needed, we'll allow for that and update you here. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Michelle. Yep.
I'm glad you chimed in with saying that. So
and partnerships, and then these are part of that.
Measurable, these are not all of them.
We could kind of
They all
start this and then down like that.
How do you accomplish this? You do this.
Partnerships, the objective is to deal with those issues. Partnerships are a tool.
Here's your objective, is to expand partnerships. What's my metric on the measures that objective? That's answering your question.
Yeah. That's the who.
You're
Yes or
identifying.
no,
So I guess I would say.
but for what?
For what I just think of why. Yeah. Do you want to hand me the things we can start writing? So let's just start with the commitment to improve. That one is, what are the specific steps to increase funding in the budget? Again, that's a pretty easy one.
We will achieve a goal, okay? So the goal is.
You have to increase the funding to what you need.
Okay.
Right now, you're doing less than half of what you need on an annual basis. Here, Rich.
Sure, perfect. Thank you.
So if you increase the funding, if you take that answer to your objective is increase your index. If you increase the funding, does it move it closer to the goal? Eventually. But we are so far behind, it will take multiple years of virtually doubling the amount you put in there to catch up, because every year you add a little bit, stuff that's at the bottom of this gets worse.
The objective isn't to catch up, it's to improve where we're at. So I think every time we invest more.
And that's what's nice about the index now is we can see incremental.
Incremental.
Because every year that you move up, you say, okay, this one's at the top of the list this year, and take this one off, everything else is moving.
Yeah, comes up.
You'll never catch up.
No, I don't think fiscally we.
It wouldn't be a big use of taxpayer dollars to get everything done.
No.
You got it.
Just, well, and then the next year you're
in the hole again.
Yeah.
So mix of housing, I think that's an easy one too, is support the have a comprehensive plan that meets community needs, right? And then, right,
Did you make that mix of housing objective?
Or should it be broader in the?
I mean, it could just be well-planned community, people may use mobility needs of residents is the mix of housing is one of the ways to get there. And then the mobility and meet the needs of residents is one
Now,
of
wait
the
a minute. But which ones did you just start as your objective?
He didn't start, I'm looking at, we've already got.
I know, but the older ones that you've got, those are your objectives. You just went through, you did like 5 or 6 of them. So do the ones you started, because otherwise you didn't identify them as an
So
objective.
this is a big goal, right? Well-planned community, the land use and mobility needs of residents. I would say one of the ways to meet this is with the right mix of housing. One of the ways to meet this is through the infrastructure. One of the ways to meet this is build infrastructure, right? Like, so that was, I feel like those 3 kind of already fulfilled. But do you see what I'm saying?
What I'm telling you is, you identified your objective. You did not identify that as an objective. Now you're jumping all over the place. Identify your objectives with the stars, is what they told you to do here, and deal with those.
Right, we're just looking at this one right now, you'd only start one, so we're just looking for which other one's the star, and I will say, is this like a goal statement or is this objective? Is this the goal statement? This is objective, and these are, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's right or wrong, but pretending this is star would be three, the steps we need to take. Then the extension, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we started this one with Rich's right video, that will be invest more in this, right? That's pretty easy. I'm almost wondering if this is the objective underneath this goal. And then this, and this might be the three paths. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
There's a difference between who made it yesterday and today.
There's a little debate.
No, that's.
I did a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I gotta make sure I have So, I don't know that we want to take this away from like.
Well, here's one thought I had about this, for this one, because I was thinking about that last night. You could take a piece of the one below, where it says, sustainable government providing a well-planned community and excellence in city services. And then the objective could be around mobility.
Right, like this,
Yes.
the mobility,
Yeah.
that includes housing, the
So I think you
infrastructure.
merge those two, you want the well-planned community.
Okay. Yeah, everybody has to agree.
No, not at all.
So they kind of agreed that this one is more of an objective as it's bringing in, so we can make each should.
Yeah, so well planned, mix of housing, mobility.
No, I think that takes care of it.
Yeah. This is the other thing. Expansive partnerships. I have a hard time making that an objective because I don't want to be looking at a partnership just to have a partnership. It's to address the partnership, to address, right. So it's leveraging partnerships to facilitate needs of the community.
And this is too generic to be an objective.
Because I could be partnership.
Yeah. So if you want to have an objective around that, well, this is much more specific, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if those are more than how. Maybe, I don't agree with that, I agree in partnerships as an objective. I could say leveraging partnerships to reach community goals, but I
think these are definitely objectives.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yep.
Okay. So partnering regionally, and so to be in consistence with what you're asking us, what are the specific steps to reach these goals? Give me an example of what that would be for that first, that partnering regionally and upstream drivers of homelessness and housing insecurity.
Well, to me, this is effective to achieve this.
So then
Visionary, effective, collaborative government, if that's your ultimate goal, then this is one means of getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we need to do anything else on your steps?
No.
Okay. So
Thank you. You guys are good. Don't overcomplicate it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Do you want to check on the other?
Yeah, sure.
I feel like we'll get this. So this one we need to rephrase. Like, I think it's important that we show that we're investing in the downtown, right? Like, we need the downtown to be complete and to be a success. But like, just thinking it as a future state is not an objective, right? Or is it?
How about if,
I guess it's an objective.
well, yeah, I guess you don't have to quantify, I'm trying to quantify it, but we don't have to at this point. You know, certain number of occupants or so many square feet, you know, that's.
No, because what we've said in the plan, that is for the down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what I want.
For members of the public that are listening, we're going to probably take about another 20 minutes to allow groups to continue working, and then we'll report back out, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Well, I think if you're just kind of, just dispersed, when the other group comes in, I mean.
They're still working.
Right, and when we bring it all up there, if your group feels like there's something missing, we can add it real time as we discuss.
I think there was like some process debates that were, you're at the past, but you didn't understand. So it wasn't really engagement. So it's fine. I think there's just faith that we've got enough alignment. Yeah, I don't.
Do you need us as facilitators to bring the group back together to check?
I would touch base with the mayor.
Let's wait for me to happen. It's okay. I mean, everybody's still going to get out of the early, but I think we need to make sure that council can be provided.
So no, I don't think we have the objectives there. It's not fair, but I think.
Well, I think what we want to see where you want to be is, when.
Do you feel like I mean, I don't really feel like we would. They were asking if we feel if you would complete and what we did. Or do you feel like it's kind of a complicated exercise because there's a few different things on the process?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, we can fill in
I mean.
by verbalizing
Like, yeah, I think we'll just fill in and I guess we'll ask for some forgiveness, but if we have pre-existing, I think there was a way to, would you agree with that?
Yes.
There was a lack of desire to participate by some in the week today. So we just decided to allow that to occur.
I just went out and
I think
what they were.
as long as we can get to the end of the session today.
And I didn't mean to be bossy, a lot of people think I was pushing too
No, there's just communication differences. And I'm in the middle. And there's sometimes.
All right, so Liz.
Sometimes I lead and sometimes I take cover.
I felt like I took a little cover there. I was trying and then I just.
I've been here for 20 years. I got some.
Another person who needs to come back.
Exactly. So what is it, what's the, How to Train a Dragon?
Mm-hmm.
My wife's gonna write a book on how to train.
So in our existing plan, Rich, I'm gonna facilitate with you. Let's you and I sort So I like it.
Yeah.
So there's objective number 2 under visionary leadership, and I know we've changed that to the top part, but I think to the point you and I were making, maybe we add collaborate with state agencies, counties, school districts, neighboring cities, other, stakeholders, whatever, to meet needs of the community. I just think it needs a qualifier for a reason that we're doing that. Do you like that idea? So then objective number 2.
Yeah. And, I don't know how this we don't necessarily have to list things either, you know, under objective to,
Yeah, we don't need to list every potential partner.
Yeah,
under the sun.
collaborate
Wait,
with
we could say the state.
governmental and non-governmental stakeholders, or just
That's
stakeholders.
great. I like cutting everything out. And I like the clarification that it's to meet needs of the communities. 'Cause I
Yeah.
think
Well, that's
it's funny
something,
because you and I, you may not believe this, but I worry about role and scope of government too, and making sure it's appropriate and not taking.
well, there's fishing in this.
Oh, you know what? I do think I have the fix it. I do have the, well, let's see how it is. I'll fix this.
This is,
I love the.
Cody, I forgot my computer is on Mountain Time. That's why it's showing up that way. I was setting it as if I was on Pacific Time.
Oh, and I need to unmute you when you start again. So
Okay.
I just need to do something.
Was that just now or a moment ago? Because I had announced to the public thinking we were unmuted. Should I do that again?
No, I just did it, nobody was in the room.
Just now, okay.
I think Michelle was out of the room like just a minute ago.
Got it, okay.
I didn't hear anybody talking, but I was ready for whether or not. I mean, and we could say we have overarching support for existing objectives. I mean, some of these objectives are really specific, right?
well,
And some are more broad.
if you look under, you know, like the objective 4, so I've had 9, continue to pursue local and regional strategies for addressing homelessness with emphasis on teen and family populations, including cooperation with other government nonprofits and grant opportunities. You know, so that's pretty specific.
You know, the guidance I give is from the council perspective. Try to keep your objectives a little bit higher level to give staff some room.
Well, that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
Some of these get
Wait, that's, and some
Way
of
down
these
in there.
It's like,
Yeah. Because that's still, you can take, right now, with the way that we're looking at the objective, as far as, you know, the, partnerships, you know, collaborative with governmental and non-governmental agencies, blah, blah, blah. That, you know, we don't need to get into the weeds on that.
And I almost think, like, I can wordsmith for no purpose other than being more, if there's not really value to it, but like, for whatever reason, why do we have to have a unique sense of community? Why don't we just develop programs and strategies that build a sense of community amongst students? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Cody, did you see it? Did it fix it?
Lead the development of cultural opportunities and measurements.
I was just reading that one.
What?
I was just reading that one.
Yeah, there's,
It came through on my phone, so it's probably just a delay.
Yeah,
and then it's the right time zone now. I think I got that right.
Identify the distinct neighborhoods of Westminster. We should pretty much help. I think this is a weird objective. I think we should just say grow a sense of place and community. What do you think about that? Does it seem kind of funky to you?
It does in that, I don't think we always have to identify something that is already identifiable.
Correct. It's almost insulting,
Yeah.
because then you're identifying for people what their neighborhood is. You know what I'm saying?
Or just even, we make the identification rather than making it something, we really already have their own place.
Misunderstood the time, but it's showing up as 1 mountain right now. Is that what it's agreed on?
Now it should show up at 2 o'clock because I changed it to mountain time.
Like, when we do national night out programs, when we do presence at HOA meetings.
Unless, let me just make sure.
You know,
All
Yeah,
this stuff
53.
should go
Yeah, my
back
phone's
to
not.
It should show up as
develop
2.
programs and strategies that build a sense of
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna put that dang thing in the schedule. Because for whatever reason, it's not letting me fix it like I'm trying to.
Are you okay with that? I feel like objective 6 might be the
Although-
same thing as objective, or let me
Got a good little
We
pile
might
of
be
stickies out there.
Yeah, they're ready to go.
already, because of the way that we frame these, to already consolidating these, like, the process that we're going through.
Okay.
So, because I've already, you know, as a group, it looks like when we focus on here, we're getting rid of a lot of this wordiness that's
Yeah.
down here, looking at that overarching.
Okay, this should be
So I
right
don't
now.
think it's necessary to go back through the
whole thing.
The whole thing.
Middle.
Because you kind of strip that.
So I would say, like, if you're gonna keep stuff, I feel like keeping objective 4 and 5 are
it's
good, and I feel like
9:55.
objective 6
What
is
do you
already
think in
articulated
terms of
versus
time? I don't know if
objective
you're
4.
aware of it, but it sounds like
He's out with Dawn
Do you agree with
and,
that, or am I?
and Dave.
Okay,
It sounds
4 and 5 are in
like-
agreement,
sounds
and
like
we're
this
just
will
going
I
to.
said on number 6, I feel like that is
No.
already kind of articulated.
Should I just let the group
It's
decide who, or do you want me to tell them like, hey, 20 minutes or something like that?
Just ask them how much more they think they need
We're not
to finish.
doing anything.
Yeah.
We just pull those some things into 4. And then. Wait. Objective 9 includes that objective that Councilor DeMond said, mental health for employees.
Yeah.
I mean, I would really feel pretty good at we're in alignment.
Yeah, and then that whole objective too, then would shift under, sustainable. So those objectives with beautiful driver safety and environmental sustainability.
So you
Sorry.
Yeah,
that's
it's
the sort of-
also here.
Yeah, well, that comes back to the title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that these are all complementary. And then when strategy, a little,
We've got one here already. Why would you do that? It's fine.
It's totally fine.
Pull it over there. It's a little, that's a ship.
Right, something also allows some fruit, maybe, and some, you know what I mean, like focus.
So I think in general, strategic plan from us should be developed and it should be maybe a current back.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. From us.
Right.
I'm just saying that this part is not part of it. Like what we're going through right now, that's on council dictating each one of those.
Right, yeah, then, then staff fills in.
Yeah.
But I think from, our should retain that as much as possible. And then you turn the page to the next tab and then.
That's where.
It's like a vision.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
And part of that is a little bit of a marketing thought. Selling it's more communicated.
Yes, I don't believe marketing is selling, right? That's why you have sales department and marketing department. Is to marketing is supposed to understand the needs of your customers, right? And then you are thinking about how they're meeting.
And then the customer finds it, they agree with the line.
Exactly.
So,
Right, so it's like an iterative feedback loop, where sales is very transactional.
Yes.
So,
Well,
it can be a relationship, but it's hard, it's a little bit different. So let's go, do you want to go through this real quick? Okay. No, that's great, I'm jealous. You were trying to see that. Whatever reason I'm not processing. So, I feel like this map that objective that we already have there, the making a citywide commitment to sustainability, we kind of changed the urban job a little bit, but it's the same. So
that's drawn up into there.
But ongoing excellent management, that's part of, and that one's in here too, we started. Provide opportunities for residents and visitors in place, that's somewhere too.
That's in 2 places, really.
Develop an economic development strategy that contributes to city vision, achievement. What does that mean?
Well, that's part of, it works better when you look at the subsets, 21, 22, 23.
Yeah.
And that
I
fills
trust
in,
that. I just don't know that.
that does fill in a bit.
You're not going to be presenting both on the.
It's kind of that well-planned thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it also the access, that's the one thing I would exclude that we don't have is access to opportunity through, in the, okay, so the way we have this,
That's
we would have right here, I really like promote access to opportunity through resilient and diverse development versus, I guess we just state that there.
That's fine.
Right.
As long as they're doing it both.
And then
Yeah, 'cause that is a, that's a big one. Right there.
that is so important.
Yeah, but that could be driving the communities, promotion, access, opportunities, and all that.
I know, I just wonder. I don't know. They're all connected, I mean, that's,
Right.
it's all community, that's,
And
isn't that
that is
should be all.
possible because they do,
How do you came up with your
all of
computer?
because we got some of these up high enough where they reach to the, so they can.
When you go down, and that's a good sign, right, like that, that's a good sign.
Hey, what's going on? That's what's really- I'll try to, I'll get through talking to that.
Here you go. I think your microphone is.
All my computer, or even that.
We didn't connect to this microphone.
Oh. Let's talk to the Ron. Could you?
So here's how they all work. What are you doing? Running spread?
Yeah.
I have five. Are you Well, this is what I kind of.
Yeah.
So, okay, develop these solutions. No, I stopped. I stopped getting the big ones and started getting the little ones because that is the road. That is the one thing.
With the whole.
The development needs to conference and all right.
Yeah, that's very much.
I have consumed every type of olive and all over the world, and no matter what they are.
That sounds great.
You
All right, ready to start?
Yeah.
Well, that comes into the second, that's part, the decision study.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that, I read that as being.
Right.
Yeah, that one
I mean, I just get very green.
right, yeah, because this one,
There was. So the big deal is the way the process is, American position. Nope. It's disgusting. Period. Like, whether you eat them, like, I thought. Just give me your difficulty, so.
and then you use them on that. Oh,
I think it goes in, I think these are very, no. All those transportation. This is I know how the transportation goes from but we have it up here.
But yeah, if I put ours in there, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
All right.
We did, Mitch and I worked together and got stuff. Yeah.
Oh, infrastructure, okay.
You become way more territorial.
The little one was started.
It's better to celebrate these
Little ones
weddings.
always. We have.
Did you guys have a good time with your group?
She's like, I offered her a sugar. Okay. She got
Okay, so I think we have everyone back in the room except for Rich. So we'll give him another minute. I think he might have run down the hall.
Yep.
And we should be good to go.
Yep, we'll get it wrapped up here.
I'm gonna go ahead and unmute and let the public, oh, Cody.
Oh, and. Okay, you're not muted.
Yeah, I think you can.
So that's
No, I think that's best if we, okay, Rich is back, so I think we can.
All right, for members of the public watching, we're gonna be starting back in just a minute.
Yep.
All right, so let's pick up the conversation by reporting out from each of your groups. So everybody's put their ideas from their group on the wall. I took a quick look and some really great content up here. So we're just gonna talk through and kind of share out what each group had, and then give those that weren't in that group the opportunity to understand, ask any clarifying questions, add to, and then as a group, we'll kind of say anything finally that's missing, that's come to mind that we want to add up there. And then the next step from that point will be the conversation of putting this into a written format, giving that to staff for additional discussion with City Manager Tripp and his team. Great content up here. Just a couple notes. If there are things that we're talking through that look more like measurements, there's some of that up there, or look more so in the weeds than that objective, that's great. that's good information to have in the conversation as those conversations with staff continue. But we don't need to focus too much on those. If you see, oh, well, somebody else had measurements and we didn't really get there, that's okay if that's not up there. So don't be discouraged or feel like we have to vet that out if that's not the approach that your group took, because more time to come for getting those fleshed out as measurements and such. So which of the two groups would like to start? All right, Counselor Seymour, if you want to.
I can't read them from here, so should I?
Yes, if you
definitely.
can
Come
come on
around.
up.
If anybody can read them from there?
So if you want to read them out, and maybe you can just go one goal at a time, and after each goal and you've read those out, then let's pause and see if there's any questions or comments from the group.
We, starting down here where we were looking at the overriding of sustainable government providing excellent city service, we need a well-planned community, meet the land needs, mobility, residents. Okay, so we're looking at, part of this is the well-planned community, then the objectives under that is our mix of housing, mobility needs, and then tying that back into our infrastructure objectives. So, and then also too, we looked at, is that the right spot? Commitment to improving our road, the objective is increasing funding for road improvements. So that was that. Mayor Pro Tem jump in if I completely missed something there.
Anything on that goal from what he spoke to? Any questions or thoughts before we go to the next goal?
And I guess I would just make sure we didn't lose kind of that connection to building infrastructure with an eye towards resilience and resource efficiency, right? But that's more of a qualifier, I guess.
Yeah, and tying these key parts here to that too. So because they are blocked well together as an objective themselves.
That's great.
And then the overriding, thriving, inclusive, engaged, and promoting access is that business success as an objective. And then under that, you have the underlying objectives here. And then your downtown success, how we then qualify that down. We didn't put a measurement on that.
Keep going. I'll fix this.
I don't want to take that as some kind of,
No, it's just not as sticky as it should be.
That's it. And then tying into our citizens communications and then placemaking strategies for neighborhoods. So, and then I guess we can.
Any questions on that goal before he
I just
jumps
keep
to the
moving
next
fast.
one? You're just so eager. I love it. It's
I
great.
guess we did not put ours here for that. We had a large discussion about it.
Did it get placed somewhere else? What was the word?
Well, too, we're trying to bridge the beautiful, desirable, safe, environmentally responsible. That
We did star that one though, as
Yeah,
an
we did.
objective.
Yeah, and well, we had a couple, bringing these two together, but then they also fit back into our well-planned community. So that was one discussion is, even though we have these four steps, these all are bridging to each other. So I think that makes a nice integration from that standpoint. And not even continuing to expand community outreach, but not qualifying it with police, fire. That's that holistic approach that we talked about too, is that all safety aspects, health access. So our upstream tattoo that we're all getting.
Great. Thank you so much.
And I think it should be important to note that Rich and I kind of went through all of the existing objectives to see if we're comfortable with what exists in our strategic plan now. And we saw areas for potential consolidation. Would you agree, Rich?
Yeah.
But for the most part, I would say there wasn't anything obnoxious or concerning to us in our existing objectives.
No, it just gives staff a great opportunity to take that one.
And yeah, so they can take we weren't by omission of existing objectives.
By not re-articulating existing objectives does not mean that we don't still endorse those objectives. But we did see areas that maybe it wasn't an objective level, maybe it was really more of a strategy in the objectives, and we saw some redundancy. But overall, we were supportive.
That's great. It sounds like both groups took that approach to inform what gets up here with what is in the existing plan and update. So there's some level of continuation where things are appropriate to be continued. So that's great. All right, let's go ahead and have the second group report out, and then we'll, after that, look at anything that's starred that didn't already get touched on, just to remind ourselves of what everybody really liked up there. So who wants to go from the other group? Counselor Smith, here we go. All right. Same thing, let's do one goal at a time and then see if there's any questions or comments.
So we also looked at what we currently have in the strategic plan to see if what we were coming up with here is aligning or drastically different than what we already are trying to establish in our strategic plan. And under beautiful, and actually Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Seymour, we were looking at ways to maybe find the gaps and find the melding that can happen with some of these, but under beautiful, desirable, safe, and environmentally responsible city. And this actually might lend to a bigger perspective, because Councilor Seymour and Mayor Pro Tem kind of looked high level, and we actually, our group kind of took it a little further as far as what's measurable. So, so we have under beautiful, safe, responsible government, a map to partnership. So what does that look like for partnership within environmental, mental health, homelessness? We know that there's a lot of partnerships that can happen, but actually mapping it out is where we find that there might be a gap as far as what we can provide. And then the commitment to maintaining and preserving open space, and then of course our recreation within Westminster. The next one is
any questions on that goal? Sorry to interrupt you. Any questions or comments on that one?
The period cultural amenities, were they part of that as well or not?
We have that listed in a different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So under thriving, inclusive, and engaged community, promoting access through opportunity, through a resilient and diverse economy, we are looking for more of a commitment to local, and not just local, but assisting in local resources for small businesses, retail, restaurants, and then finding ways, again, partner with what's already out there. So partnering with the chamber. And this is where our group maybe thought we have a homeless navigator to focus on ways that there might be gaps in assisting the community in that way. But we also maybe thought a small business ambassador or navigator could help then facilitate the gaps that might be there for small businesses. And our example towards that was through the pandemic. We offered grants through the city that led to small businesses, and some of them actually came up without not being in good standing. And so how do we bridge that gap that they didn't know that they were in good standing? And so how do we then communicate that we're having the check marks that we need for small businesses in Westminster? And then adding that partnership for focusing on workforce and workforce training within Westminster. And then for that dynamic, diverse economy, also buying insurance through diversity. Oh my God. Let's see. The visionary. Does anyone have any questions? Visionary, effective, collaborative government. This is where probably we focus a lot more on, and this is where we had leadership in good governance, collaboration, vibrant, inclusive, and engaged. And the metrics into this, we talked about communication in several regards. So we're looking more at providing, this kind of goes back to the data conversation that we had yesterday, as far as website hits, and providing data as far as fire and police calls, crime stats, the demographics within Westminster. So who is Westminster demographically? And is there a trend in core requests that we can provide data to the public in that regard. So if there's so many people asking for a certain thing, that might be an option to then provide information so that it's not having to go into a forum request. Social media stats, what does that look like? How many hits are we getting? And then different avenues next door, and then a vehicle of text, maybe phone calls. But that also lends to the greater perspective of maybe the gap in communication with our seniors within Westminster. How are we effectively communicating with them? Social media technology isn't always the venue to maybe hit out for our seniors. So are there other avenues that we can bridge in that communication? And then let's see, there was also conversation about continuing the broadcast with the mayor and the chamber, and then also maybe including not just the mayor and the chamber, but council and other resources that we can potentially broadcast, as far as maybe a town hall to go into unscripted, just kind of a fire organically question and answer type thing. We also talked about data of our record of votes. So whenever we vote on a certain topic or issue within the city, what we do legislatively, we say who supported, who didn't, who voted this way, who didn't, just for transparency and data purposes. The door knocking, as far as council and staff related tactic, as far as providing that feedback. So not just sending out and pushing surveys through online, but actually meeting people at their doors and hearing from them in an engaged way. Increased multi-use, and this kind of lends back to what we've talked about over the last couple months, is communication for bilingual, whether that's Spanish, whether that's use of ADA, and making sure that we provide all access to our residents. And then Mayor Person, this is where we have that cultural connections as far as that vibrant, engaged, inclusive community. And then the sense of place, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, but we'd like to see a commitment through the arts. And whether that be through public art, whether that be through our plays that are Parks and Rec, through our Parks and Rec department, that we've been consistently and actually successfully having within Westminster, just something that includes that artistic approach for getting that cultural connection. And then the last one is sustainable government providing excellence in city services and the well-planned community. This kind of lends to our current goals of ease of mobility and being financially sustainable. Ease of mobility, connecting all paths, fostering current transportation, looking at the walkability, bikeability, rideability through bus and rail within Westminster, and then mass transit is good at providing mass transit, but what is a huge gap and that cities could potentially partner in is providing that first and last mile connection, or partnering in ways to help provide a solution for getting to first and last mile solutions, and then providing that opportunity to all connections. The financial sustainability is plan on establishing and replenishing reserves. So looking at what we went through this past year, we tapped into our reserves. So how attainable and adding a metric in how we build back up on reserves for the next dip that we might potentially occur. And then finding innovative ways to diversify our revenues. And then, let's see. We also talked about unity and how at times not only council but our city and staff could be not unified and very divisive. And so there's a objective in our current strategic plan that lends to promoting our spirit goals. So I think not only focusing on it internally, but focusing on it externally, but also, I mean, we expect staff to revolve around spirit goals. So I think it would be kind of underlying factor as far as Westminster being in the spirit, promoting the spirit goal. So, we're good.
Any questions or thoughts on that? All right, great work to both groups. Really fantastic. Again, this is that raw material that then will get built out and formalized for you all to continue having discussions on and talking through more. Just to go back to some of the ones that were starred that maybe necessarily didn't get hit on, just so we all recall those and things that y'all were connected with. Over here on the goal of sustainable government providing excellence in city services and that well-planned community concept. The commitment to improve road index rating, which the first group also talked about too. Others connected with that, which is great.
And we might have forgotten to start some of ours, but Rich explained them, like the mix of housing, like all of that. I think you might have put it up in the green, but they should have probably been, like
It would
the build infrastructure.
It would be great if you would do that before we close, just to make sure that we've got it. No, that's okay.
That's all right. Yeah, we'll allow some time for y'all to do that here as we wrap up.
So then for this one, visionary, effective, collaborative government, the idea of partnerships had 3 that got started here. So expand partnerships, which is kind of a broader statement, right? Got a lot of stars. And then 3 specific ones underneath that were written out that got stars. So in terms of the wording, this is kind of at that right level of detail. So partnering regionally on upstream drivers of homelessness and housing insecurity, partnering to address and improve outcomes regarding mental health, i.e. youth, police, and support, and partnering with school, PRL, et cetera, to find natural synergy and compatible goals between those two, so middle school sports, CTE, bulk contracting, et cetera.
So with that, I think it's important to note that Counselor Seymour and I had a discussion, and we both thought, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor Seymour, but Counselor Seymour and I in our conversation talked about how expand partnership in and of itself is not really an objective. We really liked the idea of a qualifier of expanding partnerships to meet
community needs and goals. And in fact, it exists in our current strategic plan as collaborate, and it's very long. It's objective number 2. And we had kind of wordsmithed it just to say collaborate with governmental and non-governmental stakeholders to meet needs of the community.
But we did think that helps keep us focused on, and allows us to prioritize when we develop those partnerships.
Absolutely. Anything on these 2 goals that needs to be added that maybe you realized, oh, that was kind of missing, but important to get up here as a new station?
I believe they included environmental and greens beyond the stars. I think they're greens were their version of stars. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. The greens and the stars are kind of that. Okay. This one, thriving, inclusive, and engaged community and promoting access to opportunity in a resilient and diverse economy. The stars here were the small business stand-up program. Downtown being an unqualified success with office, retail, entertainment, housing, events, and so on. And expanding citizen-led town halls, and then placemaking strategies specifically related to those cultural components.
And the greens, right?
Oh, yes, and the greens. We just already read through, so I don't need to ignore this.
Okay.
Yes, Counselor.
So we're considering a citizens academy, so kind of civics 101. We want to capture that somewhere in an engaged community.
Here's a green one, Michelle. If you don't mind writing it, I'll give you the green.
Those
Yeah.
services we provide, I think that might be like that.
And you would put that under the thriving, inclusive, and engaged
I think
community?
engaged community,
Yeah.
People who know what city government does with them.
Yeah,
Be
absolutely.
like advocates for $1 million.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, great. Great. Anything else on your mind? All right, then the last goal over here, beautiful, desirable, safe, and environmentally responsible city has stars on expanding open space, so parks and recreation opportunities with an eye to geographic equity was starred. A similar one here also being starred of trails and open space maintenance and accessibility, being well connected to neighborhoods, lots of synergy there. Working to bring resilience and environmental stewardship to code, programs, capital infrastructure, and government functions, and continuing to expand community outreach with police and fire being noted, but we talked a moment ago about a more holistic view of that. So those are what we're starting, and of course, with the UN too, we already covered. Anything to add there, thoughts or questions?
Again, I just want to reiterate, Counselor Seymour and I chose not to rewrite ones that were already captured in our existing. So like, I don't think we didn't have any issue, and we'd like to retain the make a citywide commitment to sustainability, right? Things that are already in there. Their omission on this was not indicative that we are no longer interested in those objectives.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other final thoughts before I turn it back to the other Michelle for some final wrap up? Going once, going twice. All right, Michelle.
So I would just ask if there's anything up there that didn't get starred that needs to be starred, just do that before we wrap up. So we're very clear about, yeah.
And then do you want to discuss how you thought about wordsmithing the two yellows over there? Because you
Yeah,
said it in
and-
a way that was really clear to me.
Yeah, and I think we might be able to do it with this one too, so that we end up with a single goal statement. So one thought I had on this one is that it could be combined to say sustainable government providing a well-planned community and excellence in city services. And then you have the mobility piece down here in the objectives. So that was one thought that we had, and I had another thought for this one, but I think
We talk about next steps. So what we typically do, as long as our clients want us to, is take your work that you have done and, draft it and craft it in such a way that it is in a true strategic plan format where the objectives are stated as objectives, the goals are stated as a way a goal needs to be stated. And using all of your raw material and creating a draft, and then having Don and his team, okay, if this is direction from council, what are the specific actions we need to have in here in order to make progress and start implementing on this? And then all of it comes back to you, and you have the opportunity to reflect on it again and say, oh, you know what? Out of those guiding principles that Barry Dunn kind of wrote those up, and there's a word missing there, or there's a couple of words that we don't like, that don't quite get it, and so you have that opportunity to revisit it. So that's that we're going to use to get this to the next draft stage. So the draft stage, so you can look at it again. Anybody have questions
If
about
I can
that?
just add
Yeah.
one note, Michelle.
Yeah.
In terms of kind of the quantity that we have up there, we've added some things, and to the point earlier, we've referenced some things in the current plan that can update without necessarily eliminating things, so don't be too concerned about the volume. I think an option in this process is to have staff's input come into play when we talk about what does truly need to be pulled forward from the existing plan versus are there things of lesser priority? How does that get ranked? So that was just a comment that had come up in conversation that I wanted to make.
And what I've seen, oh yes, someone's got a question or comment. Don? No. Yes.
Just in that process, it sounds good, but one thing that I'm curious, do we get to see kind of each raw step when it comes back to us? So we see what was handed to staff and then kind of their iterations so that we feel like we're understanding the full process?
Yeah, that might be something for us to talk with city manager Tripp about how you want to facilitate the process with your staff, and whether there's multiple iterations or that happens at once.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful, and this is a very good point,
that you don't end up with too many objectives. So the way I've seen councils and county boards do this in the past, where we'll give it to staff, staff will go through it and talk about the progress that's been made on this one, or add some context to it. And then I've actually seen councils and boards just like redline through or strike through certain objectives to say, we are 80% complete on that, and that it doesn't mean that it's not important to us, but it means that we have made significant progress on that. We don't need to include it in the cycle of the strategic plan because we are well on our way to completing it. So I think be cognizant of the fact that you don't want to have more objectives than is possible to achieve, right? So just want to make sure that we do that pass.
Well, and so that's part of the reason why I ask, like, to make sure that we see those so that we can just understand you can explain this was dropped off for this reason, so that we just understand it. Then I feel like that negates any questions, and we just understand the process and why you did things.
Yeah, exactly.
And perhaps by having those guiding principles, right?
I was going to say that.
Perhaps,
Perhaps by having those guiding principles, we don't have to be as specific in each of the objectives, right? Because that provides a lens to look at each objective. And so we don't have to be as wordy or as deliberate in each objective. And I mean, even Counselor Seymour and I going through each objective as they are now, we saw areas where we probably could have consolidated them, right? Where we're just, kind of different takes on the same idea. And so there is a value, and I'll let Counselor Seymour, if he wants to articulate it, that he described to me in having very brief goals and objectives so that we're so clear in our communication. Do you want to go?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Oh.
Okay, so we'll go to Council Member Voles, and then Council Member Seymour, we can come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Staff is going to do that. Yeah, and they can bring that information back to you. This is where, there might be a little bit of back and forth. So, I mean, when it comes back and you're looking at it, you say, well, wait a minute, this is missing, or this is still really important to us. We think there's more work to be done on this, right? And Don will also be able to come back to you and say, look, folks, my staff didn't get quite enough direction from you on this particular thing. So there might be a little bit of back and forth, and that's okay. Yeah. Councilmember Seymour.
Yeah, thank you. And that was one discussion too, is that I think we all agree that we did a great job of collaborating on our vision, getting it down to something that we can easily articulate. And so, moving the strategic plan to something like that it is helpful for us. So when, we don't have to go all the way down in the weeds, but if we have, I'm a one-page person, but this one is to communicate those levels, and it's easier for us to get together. So, that was the thought of, and we did this, we combined a lot of things that fit under the same thing. And so no need to have repetitive, and we don't need to give staff the direction on those parts either. So it's a good objective.
I will tell you all that we try very hard not to be too prescriptive. We want to meet our clients where they're at within their strategic planning cycle, with their whole planning process. And I was really, really encouraged when you guys started coming up with guiding principles, because that is a best practice to have in a strategic plan. When you can provide that kind of guidance to say, staff, this is the lens we want you to look through as you are giving us advice, and as you are problem solving and creating solutions on the ground level,
that allows you as a elected group of leaders to stay at the 30,000 foot level. And it allows you greater ability to pivot when something like a pandemic happens, and you could say, this is our overarching goal. How do we pivot within that goal and still keep going in that direction that we all said that we wanted to do? So I think you're making some really good additions and modifications to your strategic plan that are really going to help you down the road. Okay.
You want to use my
While Council Member Scully is doing that, I wanted to ask City Manager Tripp, do you have anything more you'd like to say about the discussion that we've just had about our process and next steps? Or any clarifications you want to make? Okay. Okay.
There's a whole thing. There's this one. There's this one here. No, it won't. It'll break someone's computer off this thing. This one is like in here for all of these. It's like into all of our computers and it's an outlet. Oh, it is. This I had on looks like fire coach. Yeah. I know, take a picture.
For those members of the public listening, we're just making some AV adjustments for connectivity. We'll be right back to the discussion.
Is that working? No. Okay, do you want to use my computer? My light is working, so if you can get this to reach you, it'll work. Try. It's not that good. It's like this too. It's not and this one is live.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
It's like you're on now. You're on now.
Thanks for all the help.
Our spider web of power cords. Okay. Was there anyone else, Mr. Mayor, that had their hand up or that were asking to? Okay. Don, did you have any clarification or comments you wanted to make about next steps?
You know, I need to see what you come back with. And,
yeah.
Just looking at the current plan, there are 14 current objectives. I think that's right. Yeah. And I don't know how many were added. I'm not really clear on that. So there'll be 14 plus whatever's up here.
There could be.
Yeah, there may be some that
are the same.
You decide that are the same.
Yeah.
And that have to be word.
Yeah.
And then whatever that number is, there are currently I think 6 or 7 goals, right? But are there now 4 goals? So those 4 goals are going to be the goals. There will not be these 6 or 7 goals.
That's right.
And there'll be the 14 objectives, or whatever is put together here in Meldon.
Yeah. We don't know the number of objectives yet because we haven't done the full crosswalk between what's up here and what's in the current plan. And we also need input from your staff regarding, well, this objective, we've completed 90% of it. So if this is our updated strategic plan going forward, I would argue that you do not need to keep that objective in the plan going forward.
Yeah, these objectives are pretty broad. They're not action items. They're objectives, right? So
we may have a little bit of back and forth to do to fine tune those. But
I'm just trying to walk through. I'm going to walk through what you asked me how I think this is going to work. I'm going to walk through that, and it's not to say that this is the answer at all. But so there's there will be 4 goals, the 14 objectives plus these objectives that'll be melded into whatever that number is. And the first thing that we'll do is we'll look at those as a staff and say, we understand those or we don't understand those, and there'll be interaction. We're not going to take anything off the table without talking to you, anything that you've said or anything that we perceive as being in this conversation. So that's the first thing. And I think there's an iteration there that doesn't go any further. But I think the next piece of work for us will be to look at, so how do we implement Objective 8? And what did we hear in the conversations that were more action items that were suggestions such as the Civic Academy, which to me is an action item. It's not an objective. Right?
Yep. But we wanted to capture it.
So we'll have these, we'll put those underneath, and then we'll have a deliberation about what we believe is the best way to get to your objective.
Yeah.
What are some ideas there? And we'll come back with all those. And before we come back with that piece of it, the lens that I'll have for the staff is going to be to look at each one of them and answer the question, are we A, B, or C? Is this action item in process and already underway? Is this a completely new action item that we don't have underway? And is it a major or a minor sort of an effort? In other words, can it be absorbed? Is it something that doesn't take resources? And then number 3, if it's a major item, can we do it? And try to provide you some ranking within the objectives of the action items that we think get to the best result.
Perfect.
But I think that's probably I was thinking this was a 1-step process. That's probably a 2-step, at least 2-step process. Yep. So we already have, Michelle's working on a meeting with my staff where they'll go through these. And I would think within a couple of weeks, you're back in a couple of weeks with these guys, we'd be able to say, okay, here's where we are with the objectives. Is this what you're looking for?
Yep.
And then I think we'll wait on the action item things, which the action items that we'll look at will take the old plan and the new ideas that are up here, and we'll come back with what we believe is the way to get you to your objective.
Yep.
We're going to try to get you to all of your objectives.
Yep.
Okay. Does that sound right?
Yes. Yes.
So I want to, excuse me, Mayor, I want to make sure that everybody here, all 7 people, was that okay what I said? Because that's really important.
My follow-up is directly kind of answers my thoughts of it. So to make sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying, but the other thing that I would hope that we're doing, like take the Civic Academy, for example, like that's something we're already doing. What bucket does it fit in or doesn't fit in a bucket? And we should reevaluate those things. Like, are they core services? Another example might be like us doing the implementation of the body cams and what our policy is. Like, what bucket does that fit under? Or the project that's already going on with the chief of the community outreach. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff that you guys obviously are already doing, but I feel like the strategic plan should be like, it should fit in one of those buckets if we're doing it, right? So like, is that going to be kind of part of your process? Because I feel like those actions, like we need to address those first, right? Like these are the core things that the organization's doing that they should be spending bandwidth on, and figuring out what bucket they fit under, and then looking at some of the other action items that are there or not there, and we don't have anything that meets this goal already. So then we have those, further discussions like, okay, what helps us get at that goal? So, I imagine that's going to be part of the thought that, I'm working through how
I'm sure there's 10,000, right, that we're doing. And so I don't know that we go through all of 10,000 and try to get in a bucket, but I do hear what you're saying is that it's important for you to understand that this objective already has this major element underway that supports it. Cody, how do you think we do that? How do we take like
the thing we do other things like the recommendations from what's already underway?
Yeah.
I think we take it and put it in the
we take the same sort of strategic plan in the format in that chart and sort of do some status items and add notes to what things are underway that might fall under those buckets. And we do some things to indicate which ones
Oh, yeah.
are new.
We're doing that.
And so
Yeah.
we're just
Kind of
gonna
with that-
take that.
It's that color-coded process.
chart
Yeah.
and-
I think that's a great solution.
And it's probably not all of them, but it's like I think the body camera is a good example because that's a big one.
Yeah.
You've allocated resources to it. You're probably going to have to allocate more resources to it, which is another lens. I mentioned this before, this idea of lenses, and we'll use that. Charter, constitution, city ordinances, resources and priorities.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think our hope would be that you'll be able to see this tie right back into the budget, that you're going to be able to make budget decisions that align with actions. So.
And can I just say one thing about how I have seen other
Please.
cities do this, and we've helped them to do this. I love what Cody's saying about how to connect all those dots, and I think that's really important. If there is a major initiative that is an initiative that's already underway, but that initiative helps you to make significant progress towards a goal that you have, I have seen cities capture those initiatives in an appendix with a side-by-side. So these are some strategic initiatives that are underway, and they are crosswalked with the goal or objective in an appendix in the document. So that's another way of dealing with the either broad cross-cutting initiatives or the really big strategic ones that allow you to make great progress towards the goal. So it's another thing to talk about and putting into your plan.
Yeah, great.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
So this was a perfect transition. I was going to ask Dawn and Cody and the Michelles, how does this work? We have our budget retreat coming up really pretty soon. Is this going to be enough time for this kind of iterative process, multi-step process that you were talking about for it to functionally inform the budget? Or do we need to maybe delay that budget retreat to allow that back and forth? Because how on earth can people fund a strategic, do you see what I'm saying? I'm just wondering if there's enough time between final adoption of the strategic plan and articulation of the budget.
That's our intention, is to get it to you before then, and Michelle will be joining us during the budget retreat.
Okay. And we're comfortable with.
I think we've talked offline about that, and I just think we have to commit to making it work. We just need to get it done.
Okay.
Close the budget retreat.
Just gonna do it. All right.
Yeah,
We'll
and
go
I
back.
would say the the May 15th is a date later than they had hoped for. And part of that is to accommodate this. So, fucking the strategic plan back to the snowstorm has sort of.
I think so.
Done those things. So really our intention.
Just gonna do it.
Because the nexus of the two things are so important.
They're very
The strategic plan that's not connected to our budget is just a thought exercise
That's the
versus,
point.
yeah, okay. So I guess that's my.
We're gonna make it happen.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bowles.
I just want to clarify a little bit about the Civics Academy. What I wanted us to make is civics, local government civics 101 efforts. An example might be, right? So that's for staff to work at. I just want to put that out there. I'm not being restricted. But that was just an example of what I'm trying to say with overall effort to the other things or that.
It's about, I think what you're trying to say, it's an overarching thing about civics. It's not just necessarily the action step of the academy.
I think what you just described.
Right. It was kind of like an action item. And then maybe the city's academy. I meant more broad.
A broad overall civics effort, Michelle, that is an objective, not an action. That's great. Thank you. Yep. So, there was one other question I wanted to ask you, and then I want to wrap things up. Your current strategic plan, I don't believe includes, and I know you're measuring all kinds of things, which is great, but I don't see performance or outcome measures attached to each of the goals in the strategic plan. And I'm going to look to Don and Cody to say,
They're there, they just don't appear in this document, because what I saw you starting to do, and I think this is really important, is I saw you starting to put metrics up there. And I mean, we are huge proponents of you being able to have some objective way of measuring your progress towards these things. And we're not going to work on that today. We can get a lot of advice from staff on how to measure. But it was more of a question of, would you like to see, at the very least, outcome measures of some kind or some type of performance metrics for each goal that would allow you to objectively know that you're making progress towards that goal?
I think that's it's nice to see those up there too. When we were looking at the indexes, and Councilor Vols thought too on the Civics 101 as a general, you know, that one of the underlying matrix that is up on the board too is that's trackable is the increase in voter participation. So that, you know, that flows nicely into that metrics. And, you know, under the quality of life in the city, we talked about, you know, percentage achieved on our biannual survey of those people that felt, you know, it's a great place to live. So, yeah, we have a way to track a lot of those. And I think it's positive.
Well, and I do not want to make Tom and Cody go white in the face that I'm trying to give their staff more work when I bring this up. But it's like, what are you already measuring that will help us understand how you're making progress towards these goals, and pick a few that really demonstrate that for each goal,
Yes.
and actually intentionally include them in your plan.
Yes, that'll be iterative.
Is there some responsibility on council to come up with that as a way to fairly evaluate Dawn too? Like, is that fair to Dawn to ask, like, hey, these are our goals, and come up with how you're successful in them? I mean, or should we how should we do that to assist? Because I feel like oftentimes we as the managers of our appointees are not clear with them as to what we measure success by. And we put them in this awkward position of having to facilitate their own reviews. I mean, I feel like we kind of dropped the ball as far as having a fair partnership to our direct.
So a couple things. One is, there will be some objective measures that would go in here no matter what, because that's simply the only way or ways you can measure to that goal. Your conversation about how to evaluate the city manager is not completely separate from your strategic plan, but there may be some other different measures that have nothing to do with your strategic plan that you all need to be thoughtful about in terms of your expectations. And so to me, that is a whole other conversation, which the strategic plan measures are very much a subset.
Okay. And so maybe whatever.
So maybe whatever is decided as the metrics, we just need to make sure that we're utilizing and sharing with that third-party consultant, you know, that's just to make sure
Correct.
we're
And
all on the same page. And
I would hope
it would not be fair to perform outstanding this, and that's not what you're being reviewed. Like, it just seems like that needs to be.
And I would hope that the only review of the city manager is not just the metrics that are in the strategic plan, because that would not be adequate.
Correct. And we have a process, but I just want to make sure it doesn't feel fair to me to, well, anyway, that's a different discussion, but I think we should be recognizing that when a city manager implements on the strategic plan that's been crafted by the majority of council and they're successful, that's a good thing, right? Like, that's what they were hired to do.
Yeah.
So I just wanting
Yeah.
to incorporate
Council member. Oh, okay. Yes.
Question. I have a question for you, Michelle. In terms of metrics to measure success on the strategic plan, one metric that's been described to, the last day or so is voter turnout. And I'm just wondering, in your experience, do you have metrics that you recommend to your clients that they consider as far as their success as a local government?
Yes.
It seems like there are potentially
Yes, and yes.
outside goals that might be completely unrelated to local government operations that might not be as effective as a way of measuring success.
We have lots of examples from other strategic planning processes, and some of this is not rocket science around performance metrics. And so we can make some recommendations of things that you can consider so that you don't have to start from scratch and invent the wheel from stone, okay? So that's part of the value that we can bring as strategic planning consultants, and we will bring that. Thank you for that point. And I guess,
I think David Frankel brings up a good point. We should make sure that the organization doesn't feel penalized for not hitting a metric that's outside of their control.
Absolutely.
Right, or at least not directly.
And we actually discourage inclusion of metrics that you do not have control over in your strategic plan. We really discourage that. We encourage the measurement of things, including measures of things that you actually have the ability to affect.
I think some of the value that metrics bring versus not having them is to just simply start the conversation to understand, that number is a more holistic story than just what the number is, but it's asking those questions for voter turnout, for example, where here's what the city contributed to try to increase that number of the academy and so on. What other state or other regional factors were at play, changes in legislation, for example, that need to be informing our discussion on where we go from here, but at least that helps us know somewhere generally where we're at, where we've been, where we want to go.
Yeah, so the fine point that I would put on that with Michelle's great point is that voter turnout may very well be something that you're interested in. So then the metric would be, what is the city doing to affect that? Recognizing that you don't have full control over that metric. So it would be a much more specific performance metric that's based on what the city can control and can do. Okay, great. All right, we are just a little past 11. We have completed the work. We have our next steps going forward. We'll be doing work, our consulting team with Don's team in between now and the 15th. I think we can wrap up. I just would like to do reflection and closure for the end of the day, end of the whole weekend. Kind of doing what Michelle did at the end of the day yesterday. Reflection, thoughts, anything you would like to contribute regarding the experience, anything you would do differently next time. Councilmember Seymour.
Thank you. I want to say that this was a excellent exercise. And I appreciate my mayor and fellow councilors. I thought we collaborated well. Yeah, I like the fact that we've brought in some things and then narrowed them down a little bit. And as we continue to do that, like I said, I want something I can easily articulate to our residents. And I think we're well on our way to that too. And I appreciate Don's input very much. And so I thought, I've been through a lot of planning meetings, business-wise and otherwise, and I thought this was very successful. So I want to thank both of you for that too. Appreciate it. So good weekend. Great start.
Councilmember Scully.
Yeah, thank you. This was very well done. I feel really good. I've been through a couple of these. I guess this is my fourth. And I was thinking about how I don't know if it's the time I've spent on council now, or if it was just your incredible ability to strategically pull us together. But I think this is the one that I really feel like I'm walking out with some tangibles, and I know exactly what's in the strategic plan now. And I've got some ideas about how I can move that strategic plan forward. So I really felt that this was very well done. I really appreciate my fellow councilors and Mayor Pro Tem Sites, Mayor Atchison, and how well we worked together this weekend. it felt really good to be face to face, and it felt like we had some real camaraderie, and I just really appreciated that. And Don and Cody and Dave, thank you for sitting through this whole thing. but Cody, I mean, my God, I just don't know how you pull everything always together, and it's just so perfect. I know you've been here since before 7:30 this morning, and but you know, it came off very well, and your work really shines through. So thank you. It is an amazing team. I do recognize that.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
So I'm also, really happy with how this meeting turned out and for the areas of alignment that we saw, the willingness to hear and consider each other's viewpoints, the willingness to accept some pushback, and challenge ourselves. I will tell you what I missed was having our department heads here. So typically at strategic planning, for those that are new, we would have our entire ELT team. And oftentimes our ELT team is participating in our breakouts. So while council gets the ultimate say, it's like an informative process, because as council, oftentimes we don't understand the challenges of an articulated goal being implemented. So it allows some real-time feedback, which I value. And so, at the same time, I think one of the reasons we all kind of have some relationship building with communication might have been because it was a smaller group. So perhaps we want to do it every other year for something that I just would not want to lose that dialogue, feedback, and partnership with our ELT long term. I understand COVID and all sorts of things made that a necessity in this case, but it does feel like an incomplete conversation in some ways because of that. And I do think actually maybe it was great to establish, maybe when we have after, the election, I don't know, it was nice to establish kind of the relationships and understand where you all were at with vision. That was the only thing that I kind of missed. So that's all.
And my microphone was off for all of that, so hopefully I'm loud enough that everyone did that.
Anyone else? Reflection, closure for the day, for the weekend. It's Councilmember Denard.
So I, like some of you, have been through a couple of these, and so the facilitation was great. I really appreciate you guys. I thought we've been through 3 different facilitators and all had different strengths, but I really enjoyed this process. Like everybody else, thanks to my colleagues for, a good discussion and what I feel was a good, candid, robust, honest discussion. I think that's important. I will say that in COVID, we've learned a lot of things. We've learned how to work remotely. We've learned that can be effective and efficient, and I think it's forever changed the way people are going to do business. But I also think it reminds us of the human aspect of being with each other. And I think that we've heard it from a couple of people. There's a lot of that lost in our virtual meetings, where it's easy to dehumanize people and just be an opinion on a screen, much like watching the news. So I think that this is a lot more helpful to remind us all that we're all humans and we can joke around and have fun. So I think that helped in our success today. So thank you to Dawn and your team for making this happen for us. I super appreciate it. So otherwise, I look forward to the work that you guys come back with. It's, we're not done yet. So I anticipate more and I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Before we break up, remind her of bringing stuff tomorrow night. After we're coming early tomorrow night, make sure the setup all works. We will start the council meeting at 7. Start the stuff after the diet, but they need to go through and make sure everything's working. Next steps, I'm not sure if Cody, tomorrow night.
I don't think they are, but maybe we don't know.
So they're bringing us back up computers for you. All of there will be computers there that will be set up for you and the purpose tomorrow night. And then those are all 3 over there. If any of you haven't had a chance to see the setup, I drop by early so you understand. Council is the only one that's biased. Staff creating zone, on down the floor level, and then jail park level access. Again, this council is very used to that. So, and that's,
It's 6 o'clock.
it's 6 o'clock for everybody, to be there at 6. So,
And if you don't have your key card to get in the building, let us know, we can see about making sure we get you a new one when you arrive. So if you go through the thing tomorrow, find out you don't have your key card, just let me know, so I can make sure someone gets you when you arrive tomorrow. There will be people there to let you in, that sort of thing. I think you're using your mics that are at the dais already. Take bring your computers, but not sure about the camera and your laptop. Are we we'll give these back to Ed and Jody, and then make sure they're there for camera tomorrow.
So just one last comment before y'all go and get to enjoy the rest of your weekend. Michelle and I were debriefing last night, and we just want to acknowledge all of you for your level of engagement, for the way that you worked with one another and collaborated with one another, and the way that you heard each other. I mean, we watched that real time unfold, and we could see it in body language. We could see it by different ways that you were demonstrating your level of engagement. And I just want to acknowledge you for that you really made the most out of this retreat. And I believe you're leaving with some shared, not just understanding, but some shared goals and objectives that you can all get behind. And so if it's just that, that's a success in and of itself. And then you layer on the fact that it was your first time to really get together in a year and interact in person and really be with one another. So, which had its own big value in and of itself. So I just want to acknowledge all of you for your participation. And in many ways, you made this easy for us because of all of that. So thank you. It was a privilege to be able to do this for you.
all right, guys.
So long.
This conference is no longer being recorded.